myself and curse my fate, wishing me like to one more rich in hope, featured like him, with friends possessed.
For decades, everyone believed Dame Judi Dench never held grudges. She was Britain's untouchable national treasure, a woman who could silence a theatre with Shakespeare and captivate the world with nothing more than a raised eyebrow. To fans, she was warm, gracious, endlessly forgiving. But behind that elegance lived a truth she never shared. Until now. At 90, Dench has nothing left to prove, no roles left to chase, no reputations left to protect. And with age came an unexpected clarity. For the first time, she began speaking openly about the people who tested her patience to its breaking point. Actors who dismissed her. Directors who mocked her process. Colleagues who mistook kindness for weakness. And most shocking of all, names no one ever expected. What the public never truly understood is this: Judi Dench could endure pressure. She could navigate towering egos. She could survive the brutal world of the stage. But she never forgot disrespect. Some stories stayed whispered for decades. A world-famous actor who humiliated her during rehearsal. A co-star who treated her like a beginner. A director who publicly dismissed her instincts in front of an entire crew. A celebrated performer who mocked her age on record. There was even another national treasure who turned a simple disagreement into a rivalry she never forgave. 6 moments that reshaped how she chose her collaborators. 6 names she quietly kept at a distance. 6 wounds she never allowed to reopen. And once you hear who they were, and what they did, you'll never watch their performances together the same way again. Let's begin with the one that stunned even the British theatre world. Number 1. Maggie Smith. To the public, Judi Dench and Maggie Smith appeared inseparable. 2 national treasures. 2 towering figures of the British stage. Frequently photographed laughing together, as though nothing could ever fracture their bond. But within the theatre world, there was one incident everyone remembered. A moment that cooled a friendship decades in the making and left a mark Dench never fully erased. It happened during rehearsals for a major West End production in the late 1980s. Expectations were immense. Dench and Smith together promised excellence without question. Their chemistry had always been quick, sharp, seemingly effortless. As rehearsals progressed, however, something shifted. Smith, already under the weight of a relentless schedule and intense press scrutiny, grew increasingly impatient. Dench remained steady, focused, meticulous, determined to shape each scene with care. Their methods collided. The confrontation arrived without warning. During a run-through of a crucial 2-person scene, Dench paused to ask about the emotional timing of an exchange, a routine question she had posed countless times throughout her career. That afternoon, Smith snapped. Turning to Dench in front of the entire cast, she said, "If you want to direct the play, Judi, just say so." The room went silent. Dench stood still, stunned not so much by the words, but by the public rebuke. It was the tone. The dismissal. The suggestion that her precision was interference rather than professionalism. From that moment on, the atmosphere changed. Smith withdrew into sharp humor that often cut too deeply. Dench responded with measured coolness. On stage, the performances remained flawless. Off stage, the distance between them grew unmistakable. Whispers spread through the company. 2 queens of the British stage, people said, had finally collided. When the production ended, Dench maintained her dignity. She thanked the cast. She showed no outward sign of conflict. But privately, she made a choice. She would no longer seek projects that placed them side by side. In later interviews, she spoke of Smith politely, even warmly, but never with the open affection she had once shown so freely. The world saw camaraderie. Dench remembered the moment respect slipped. Number 2. Daniel Day-Lewis. No one expected Judi Dench to keep her distance from Daniel Day-Lewis. To the outside world, they were 2 giants of British acting, each embodying a different philosophy of the craft. One stood for precision and control. The other for total immersion. But when they finally worked together, Admiration quickly gave way to exhaustion, and the partnership never recovered. It began during rehearsals for a period drama that promised to unite two of the greatest performers of their generation. Dench approached the script as she always had, with clarity, discipline, and absolute respect for timing. Day-Lewis arrived already transformed, speaking in the character's voice, moving with the character's gait, refusing to break role. She understood the method. She respected the commitment. But Dench also believed in boundaries, especially when an actor's technique began to affect everyone around them. Halfway through the shoot, the tension surfaced. One morning, Dench walked onto set and greeted the crew as usual. Day-Lewis, still fully in character, ignored her completely, pacing alone in a corner. When she approached him with a suggestion for a shared scene, he did not respond to Judi Dench. He responded to the fictional person she was meant to portray. It wasn't playful. It wasn't preparation. It was dismissal. And it happened in front of the entire room. That moment marked a turning point. From then on, Dench found herself delivering lines to an actor who refused to acknowledge her existence unless the camera was rolling. She tried to adjust, but the strain only intensified. Scenes stretched longer than planned. Conversations stalled. Communication slowly broke down. Crew members whispered about the unmistakable chill on set, the way Dench stood with her hands folded, waiting for a pause in his intensity that never arrived. The breaking point came during a particularly demanding emotional scene. Dench wanted time to discuss pacing and interpretation before filming. Day-Lewis refused, insisting that truth could only be discovered in the pressure of the take itself. She remained composed, but that moment exhausted her patience. For Judi Dench, collaboration was built on trust. This was not collaboration. It was isolation, presented as genius. After the project ended, she never spoke against him publicly. She acknowledged his talent, his discipline, his extraordinary dedication. But privately, she made a quiet, final decision. She would never again step onto a set ruled by someone else's extremes. With Daniel Day-Lewis, the brilliance was undeniable, and so was the cost. Number 3. Steve Coogan. Steve Coogan was not a name anyone expected to appear on Judi Dench's private list. They came from different generations, different corners of British entertainment, and entirely different philosophies of performance. Yet their brief collaboration left a sharp impression, one Dench never forgot. Not because of conflict alone, but because of how it made her feel, and the line she believed he crossed without hesitation. The friction began during early table reads for a high-profile project designed to pair Dench's dramatic gravity with Coogan's comedic edge. Producers hoped the contrast would feel fresh and electric. At first, Dench welcomed the energy. She admired Coogan's timing, his quick instincts, his ability to reshape a line in seconds. But the balance would not hold. What she never accepted, however, was condescension disguised as humor. It surfaced during one of the earliest rehearsals. As Dench carefully examined the emotional foundation of a scene, she asked the director about a precise character moment. Before the director could answer, Coogan interjected with a grin. "Judi, the audience isn't writing a dissertation," he joked. "They'll be fine if the line is just funny." Polite laughter rippled through the cast. Dench did not join in. She lifted her head slowly, not insulted by the joke itself, but by what it suggested. To her, depth was not ornamentation. It was the work. And in that moment, Coogan had reduced it to a nuisance. From then on, the atmosphere shifted. Coogan improvised freely, drifting through scenes Dench had constructed with her usual rigor. He altered rhythms, changed tones, dismissed feedback with the ease of someone certain the room belonged to him. Dench stayed outwardly calm, but the distance widened. Crew members noticed how she sat quietly, script clutched in her hands, waiting for him to settle, waiting for the noise to subside enough for real acting to begin. The breaking point came during a rewrite session. Coogan casually suggested cutting one of Dench's monologues, joking that the film needed less lecturing and more charm. It was meant to sound light-hearted. It didn't land that way. Dench closed her script. She looked directly at him. She said nothing. The silence was enough. Everyone in the room understood a line had been crossed. After the project ended, Dench avoided speaking about Coogan altogether. When interviewers brought him up, her answers were brief and neutral. She neither criticized nor complimented him. She simply moved forward. And for Judi Dench, that silence was the clearest judgment she ever delivered. Number 4. Kenneth Branagh. No one expected Kenneth Branagh to appear on Judi Dench's private blacklist. To the public, they were Britain's golden pair, mentor and protégé, the Shakespearean duo credited with bringing classical theatre back into the mainstream. But behind the public admiration was a very different story. What audiences never witnessed was the fracture that formed at the peak of Branagh's rise, a wound Judi Dench never fully allowed to heal. In the early 1990s, Branagh revered her. He studied her choices, her phrasing, her discipline, her fearless command of text. And she, in turn, respected his ambition, his intensity, his relentless drive toward greatness. Every collaboration between them felt charged, as if two generations of British theatre had merged into one. Producers quietly spoke of a long future working side by side. Then came the rehearsal that changed everything. They were preparing a pivotal scene for Branagh's new Shakespeare adaptation. Dench arrived with the script completely deconstructed, lines pulled apart, rebuilt, shaped by decades of hard-earned craft. Branagh, carried by the momentum of sudden stardom, dismissed her approach in front of the entire room. He insisted she was overanalyzing the rhythm and urged her to trust the spontaneity of youth instead. The atmosphere froze. Dench wasn't offended by disagreement. She was offended by the lack of respect. This wasn't a discussion. It was a public correction. And coming from someone she had once supported, it cut deeper than any critic's review. Their working relationship shifted overnight. He pushed for speed. She pushed back with precision. Tension surfaced through private notes, clipped remarks, and long silences between takes. What shocked her most wasn't that he disagreed, it was the sudden arrogance. In a single season, the student had declared himself the master. After the film wrapped, Judi Dench remained polite, but distant. Invitations to reunite on stage quietly faded away. Interviewers noticed she rarely mentioned him unless directly asked, and when she did, her responses were brief, technical, and stripped of any warmth. The public assumed their collaboration had ended naturally. It hadn't. Judi Dench simply chose not to work in spaces where respect could disappear so quickly. Number 5. Richard Eyre. Few would expect Richard Eyre to sit at the top of Judi Dench's private list. He was one of Britain's most respected directors, admired for his intelligence, refinement, and commanding presence in the theatre. Together, they created performances critics still reference when discussing the peak of modern British stage work. Yet behind that success lay a conflict sharp enough to end their partnership, and leave Dench with a quiet resentment she never tried to hide again. The tension surfaced during a prestigious London production in the late 1990s, a project that demanded absolute precision. Dench entered rehearsals prepared, grounded, and deeply connected to the emotional core of her role. Eyre arrived with a very different philosophy. His process was built on total control. Every pause, every gesture, every tonal shift had been mapped before rehearsals even began. For many actors, that structure felt reassuring. For Dench, it felt suffocating. The breaking point came during a private rehearsal. Dench suggested adjusting the pacing of a key monologue, believing a subtle shift would give the scene greater weight. Eyre shut it down immediately. He didn't debate it. He didn't explore it. He simply said, "Just follow the map, Judi." The words were flat, final, dismissive. Dench froze, not because he disagreed, but because he spoke to her as if she were an inexperienced apprentice, not the artist who had carried some of Britain's greatest roles. From that day on, rehearsals became a silent tug-of-war. Dench searched for truth within the emotional beats. Eyre insisted on structure. She pushed for nuance. He pushed for symmetry. Their disagreements were never explosive. No raised voices. No public confrontations. But the tension was undeniable. Crew members later recalled the way Dench would stand motionless after note sessions, her script pressed against her chest, as if weighing how much of herself she was still willing to offer to a vision that no longer felt collaborative. When the production ended, critics applauded the final result. But Judi Dench had already made her choice. She withdrew quietly. There was no public criticism, no dramatic rupture, just distance. Years later, when asked about working with him, her replies were brief and carefully measured. Polite, professional, and entirely without warmth. The world remembered a celebrated collaboration. She remembered the moment she was made to feel like an outsider in her own craft. For Judi Dench, that was the one line that could never be crossed. 6 names. 6 collisions. 6 moments that shaped the private world of a woman millions believed was endlessly composed. Judi Dench built her career on dignity, discipline, and a quiet strength that carried her through every stage and every set. But even she was not untouched by ego, arrogance, or the moments when respect quietly disappeared. Behind the elegance lived a memory that never softened, and a clarity that only sharpened with time. Kenneth Branagh, the protégé who outgrew his humility. Daniel Day-Lewis, the method actor who shut her out entirely. Maggie Smith, the colleague whose public snap left a lasting fracture. Steve Coogan, the comedian who mistook depth for overthinking. Harvey Weinstein, the producer who believed power outweighed integrity. Richard Eyre, the director who treated her instincts as interruptions. Each encounter left its mark. Some were painful. Some were deeply disappointing. Some altered the course of her collaborations altogether. None were forgotten. For Judi Dench, professionalism was uncomplicated. You arrived prepared. You treated people with respect. And if someone crossed the line, you did not reopen the wound. The public saw warmth, wit, a national treasure with limitless patience. The truth behind the curtain was more guarded. She wore her standards like armor. She protected her craft without apology. And when that craft was dismissed, even once, the relationship rarely survived. These 6 stories are not about scandal. They are about the cost of disrespect in a world that demands endurance. And now that the names are known, the question is yours. Which of the 6 surprised you most? And do you believe Judi Dench was right to walk away?